lineups for these guys. We can see, you know, Inner has the bullets that have less single target removal in this meta than previous metas. We can see most mages don't have polymorph. Nyria's Saigunthar mage happens to have a polymorph though, so it's going to come into great effect potentially in this specific matchup of Silence Priest versus the mage. Full mulligan for Nyria, nothing worth keeping. And from Inner's side, what he's looking to try and assemble is the draw, first off. You know, try and get what you need to go through your deck and build towards your combos. And he's going to want to try and find maybe an Ancient Watcher or a Humongous Razor Leaf or even an Acolyte of Pain. It's one of those things that is kind of like the base for his whole deck. You get that down, you silence it, you buff it, and then you abuse its health total to kind of draw. And right now his hand is set up in a position where he can use that Radiant Elemental as kind of the base for his whole deck. On turn 2, it's basically a 2-5 because you can play the Power Word Shield alongside it. And then the mage won't have any way to respond to that.
We did see a similar matchup yesterday. I believe Tice was on the mage and his opponent was on the Silence Priest. And Tice did not run a natural copy of Polymorph, but did discover one. And it still wasn't enough to be able to shut down all of the threat potential from the Silence Priest. So even with the removal capability of Nyria's mage build, the priest can put down one large minion. Faceless Shambler is such large value, and it's very difficult to stop the onslaught that eventually will just be enough to kill you in one turn.
Right, and one of the key factors to make that happen is Inner needs to try and get as many Divine Spirits as he can. So he's going to want to try and Shadow Visions into specifically Divine Spirit, because if you play a minion in Divine Spirit, the only answer to it is single target removal like Meteor or Polymorph. And if you use that answer on it, then you don't really have it, you didn't really remove the threat of the Inner Fire combo. So that could still come down later on in the game, but you have to do it because otherwise they will Divine Spirit it again in Inner Fire and kill you. So you can kind of bait them into having to use those removal tools. Just going to be patient on the coin. There's no real answer for Nyria to this this 2-5 minion. You just can't really kill that with only 3 mana available unless he has a removal spell from the glyph.
Now, obviously, Nyria would have liked to have any form of early development on the first couple of turns. Mana Worm, Arcanologist. He's getting down the Medivh's Valet now, but you need to start challenging these minions in some way. Obviously, you have quite a bit of removal. But after Meteor, how useful really is, a Firelands portal going to be, for instance, against a minion that has, 8 or 16 health?
Right, you need to try and keep him off the board as much as possible. And that's why he's putting damage on this minion right away, trying to keep the health total of the Radiant Elemental low so that Divine Spirit, for instance, won't have that much of an impact. So Inner can't potentially set up for Faceless Shambler on the following turn. But he's got a good handle on the board right now. I mean, Inner's trying to set up a base for all of his buff effects, and Nyria right now is just shutting it down. He has full board control. The Silence Priest doesn't have too much going on. The Shambler's stranded in his hand. The Cabal Talon Priest doesn't have a target. So it's really not working out for Inner at the moment. He needs to find one of those minions to try and start building up, and he's going to actually just use the Talon Priest instead of trying to maybe wait for one of the more ideal minions like Ancient Watcher or Humongous Razor Leaf, because he wants to start putting out pressure as soon as possible. Looking for single target removal here for Nyria. Mind Control could work. It's a little slow. Yeah, he goes for it. The other options were pretty useless.
Yeah.
Which is why I assume he goes for it so quickly, but it's going to take a while for that to come into effect, but I guess he has Meteor to help him out in the meantime if a giant threat comes out, and then later on, what better way to kill a huge priest minion than just take it? Use it against them.
Especially since we're already going into turn 6, and there is very little pressure on the board for Inner, so Nyria is still feeling relatively safe.
Right. And the ping there from Nyria, he's prioritizing the minion rather than the face damage. Dealing 1 damage to face is very inconsequential, but damaging the minion lowers the impact of, the Divine Spirits and increasing its health. And that's all Inner's trying to do, is land a really solid health buff on something so he can start playing these other creatures.
And he's picking up the combo pieces slowly but surely. Still needs to find one of those larger health minions to actually be able to stick alongside a Silence. You would want to play, your Humongous Razor Leaf or Ancient Watcher, silence it immediately and then buff it. Obviously, if you buff and then silence, buffs get removed. So still a couple of key pieces away from actually being able to make this work if Nyria is able to clear the board.
Right. He's able to now get out potentially 2 3-10s if he wants. Checking the secrets here. Or 2 10-10s even. Going in with the inner fire immediately. I mean, hey, why not? 2 10-10s, pretty tough to beat with only 7 mana.
Yeah.
So...
And, I mean, I can certainly understand wanting to get full value out of your Meteor. Inner very wisely putting that Radiant Elemental in the middle to avoid damage on one of the other 10-10 minions, prevent it from getting killed by Fireball and a Hero Power on the back foot. I don't know. I wonder, would Meteor on 2 small minions have been too liberal a use of the spell?
Yeah, definitely. That's why he saved it. Hey, you know, he knows it's one of his single target removal options. He only has that and Polymorph in the deck as removal options, and, you know, he wisely saved it for the situation when a big minion came out. But now the 3rd big minion comes out, and now it's a problem.
I don't know. I guess it's just so very important to keep the Purified Priest off the board by all costs, that when they have 5 or 6 cards in hand, you can kind of assume that they're starting to piece together that combo. If you leave anything up, it's very likely that you'll be forced to remove it, and then if they get 2 things up, you won't have the ability to remove it.
Well, that's the problem he's running into right now. There's a lot of things that have been able to stick. Inner was able to land the buffs, and because he was able to land the buffs, he was able to land the Shamblers, and the problem's been snowballing out of control for Nyria. Facing down 14 damage on the board now. Now even more. Now up to 17 damage on the board. So even if he self-Alexstrazes, doesn't get himself out of range of being popped. So is there any way he can try and set up to be able to utilize this mind control next turn? Actually, he's taking a taunt, so it's not too bad of a situation for him. There isn't any really direct damage from Silence Priest, so if you take a taunt, you are not going to get re-popped. So killing the smaller minions, ensuring that he gets popped at 4, seems to be a solid play. Try and play around some maybe Lyra outs from the Silence Priest. Because Lyra could dig for like a Holy Smite or something. Oh, he's going to invest more into this Faceless Shambler. He's thinking about it.
This mind control is absolutely going to catch Inner by surprise. And other than a strangely teched copy of Holy Nova in Silence Priest, there is no direct damage. So with the large taunt minion from mind control, the defensive Alexstrasza available, or you can just Alex and kill your opponent in 2 turns.
Right. Yeah.
Doesn't seem like the Priest has any way of closing out this game. Yeah, that's pretty much what we expected Inner to feel like after he sees that card come out.
He knew there was a courier card. It seems interesting to invest the 2nd Divine Spirit there. Guess he's playing around maybe a 2nd Meteor or something, but he'd already seen a lot of the single target removal, so it's very unlikely that the Faceless Shambler could die, but it's also very unlikely that there's going to be a mind control available. So now Nyria has to try and navigate this game of what's the fastest way to close out the game and the safest way. And he says, you know what, healing to 15 and just clearing the board. That's by far the safest way. There's no single target removal for Inner either, so he's facing the same dilemma that he was trying to propose onto Nyria.
Yeah, aside from Lyra and a series of very fortunate spell generation here, I don't think there's anything that Inner can really do. And obviously
he can
Nyria...
silence it, I guess.
That's
but then
true.
there's still the 8/8 there, so it's still a problem. So he's digging to try and find that silence. Nyria's going to be most likely putting up the ice block, trying to set up lethal here. He's got 8 damage out of hand max in 1 turn currently.
.25 potential this turn with a Fireball and Hero Power, so not quite there, but all but over.
And he doesn't want to commit some of these smaller minions that could be vulnerable to Potion of Madness. Another 8/8 is pretty good.
Yeah, no way for Inner to take advantage of the Bitter Tide, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Mass Dispel. Nope. Still dead.
That wouldn't have even done it. The only way out of there was some sort of crazy wild pyromancer Lyra sequence or something that abused the fact that Hydro was
silence.
Yeah, a way that's like, even if they have it, I win, I think. And I think he was just feeling a little bit desperate because of how weak his early game was. He didn't have the Watcher, he didn't have the Razor Leaf, and he felt he needed to go in.
I mean, he did end up picking up the Razor Leaf, so maybe waiting